Continue.
Thank you. Ms. Kay, can you hear us?
Yes, I can, Chair.
Thank you. We're at paragraph 4.1 of Mr. Y's affidavit.
Yes.
He talks there in paragraph 4.1 of a deliberate and planned system of patronage and corruption, which entrenched and sustained executive and mandate overreach, political interference, and abuse of power in the SSA. As a general statement, do you agree with that?
Yes, I do, Chair.
Paragraph 4.2 reads, in 2008 and 2009, a group of approximately 48 non-SSA members were recruited and trained in preparation for their deployment after the May 2009 elections into various roles, with responsibilities that included VIP protection and intelligence collection. Do you agree with that?
Yes, I do.
Can I just ask, is this established by evidence given to the investigation team?
Yes, it is.
The paragraph continues, their recruitment and training was directed by Ambassador Tulani Lomo, then a security manager at the KwaZulu-Natal Department of Social Development, DSD. Ambassador Lomo had previously been a member of President Jacob Zuma's protection team. Do I understand the position correctly from your knowledge that the 48 non-SSA members were recruited and trained in preparation for their deployment, that was directed by Ambassador Tulani Lomo, and that at that time, Ambassador Lomo was a security manager at the KwaZulu-Natal Department of Social Development?
Yes, I can confirm that.
Thank you. Paragraph 4.3 follows. It says the new recruits were mostly drawn from KwaZulu-Natal.
Apologies, Chair.
Yes.
I just want to indicate that the latter part of that paragraph, which talks about previously being a member of President Jacob Zuma's protection team, that I'm not certain of.
All right, so from your evidence and your knowledge, we can exclude that sentence.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
If we go on to paragraph 4.3, it reads, the new recruits were mostly drawn from KwaZulu-Natal and received training on, inter alia, counterintelligence, weapons training, counterterrorism, and VIP protection. Is that within your knowledge from your investigations?
Yes, it is.
This training, the paragraph continues, was undertaken both This training was undertaken both elsewhere on the continent and locally at the South African National Academy of Intelligence in May 2009. Is that correct?
Yes, that is correct, Chair.
You know, as we know, that the location on the continent where the training took place is a known fact. It's not an unknown fact, but it has been removed from the statement in the interests
Yes, I do.
of national security. Is that correct?
Yes, that is correct.
Paragraph 4.4 reads, according to one of the SANI trainers, that's the South African National Academy of Intelligence, who reported to the investigation team, the rationale proffered by Ambassador Lomo for the training was to build a presidential protection unit that is like the United States Secret Service, which would collect intelligence affecting the president. These recruited personnel would subsequently be deployed to SANDF, SAPS, and SSA, bypassing official recruitment and vetting processes when President Zuma assumed leadership after the elections in 2009. Is that a correct reflection of the facts learnt by the investigation team, to your knowledge?
I can say largely yes, because I had the interview myself with the individual that provided that, and there's a statement to that effect. And we even have the reports in, for all of those personnel. What I cannot confirm is the bypassing of official recruitment and vetting processes at SABC and SANDF. But with regards to SSA, I can confirm that. The only thing I know for sure, which I heard from one of the implicated individuals when I interviewed them, was that they had, before they were brought over to SSA, they were at SANDF. So I'm not sure whether they were there having followed official recruitment or vetting processes, but I can, with authority, indicate that on the SSA side, there was bypassing of that.
Of both the official recruitment and vetting processes?
Yes.
Thank you. We go over the page to paragraph 4.5. By the end of 2009, the affidavit continues, only about 27 of the original 48 recruits remained, as others had left the program. Ambassador Lomo's direct involvement in the recruitment and training of these non-SSA members is noteworthy, as he was still employed by the KwaZulu-Natal DSD, that's the Department of Social Development, and had no official position at the SSA during this period. Is that in the knowledge of the investigation team, including yourself?
Yes, it is, Chair.
Continues paragraph 4.6 to say, Ambassador Lomo's involvement in the training of these new recruits was facilitated by the then principal of SANI, the South African National Academy of Intelligence, who sent letters to Ambassador Lomo's employers confirming that he was assisting the SSA with training for the Presidential Protection Unit. Sample letters that we have in our possession are dated 10 June 2009 and 30 October 2011, and thus clearly predate the establishment of a Directorate for Presidential Security Support within the SSA on 27 December 2011, and Ambassador Lomo's appointment to the SSA on 18 January 2012 as General Manager, Special Operations. Are you aware of that evidence, and do you know of the allegations in this paragraph?
Yes, I agree with the paragraph in its entirety.
Right. And you've seen those letters, have you?
Yes, I have.
Thank you. Paragraph 4.7 goes on to say, the evidence available to the Project Vesa investigation team indicates that the groundwork was being laid during this period for a private protection unit dedicated to President Zuma. As detailed below, the restructuring of the SSA, which coincided with Ambassador Lomo's appointment, saw these non-SSA members absorbed within the Chief Directorate Special Operations and deployed to various structures within the Justice, Crime Prevention and Security cluster. Is that information known to you, and do you confirm it?
I cannot confirm that they were absorbed within the JCPS cluster in its entirety. So maybe, yeah, I cannot confirm that I can't confirm that.
Is that you can't confirm that they were deployed at all?
Pardon?
The question, well, you finish your answer first and then I'll ask a question.
I can confirm that where it pertains to CDSO, that there was this appointment and they were absorbed within CDSO as co-workers. But I cannot confirm that they were also deployed to various structures in the JCPS cluster.
All right.
I'm sorry, Mr. Pretorius, you are at 4.7? Is that where you are?
Yes, Chair.
Well, just to make sure what Ms. Kay confirms and what she doesn't confirm, let me do this. You see the first sentence in paragraph 4.7, Ms. Kay? Do you see
Yes.
the first sentence?
Chair.
It says the evidence available to the project VESA investigation team indicates that the groundwork was being laid during this period for a private protection unit dedicated to President Zuma. Are you able to associate yourself with that?
Yes, I can.
Okay, all right. And then there is, as detailed below, the restructuring of the SSA, which coincided with Ambassador Lomo's appointment. So these non-SSA members absorbed within the CDSO and deployed to various structures within the Justice, Crime and Prevention and Security cluster. Is there any part of that sentence that you are not in a position to confirm as true?
The part that I cannot confirm, Chair, is the part where it refers to the deployment to various structures within the JCPS cluster.
Otherwise, you can confirm the rest of that sentence.
Yes, Chair.
Okay. Mr. Pretorius, do you want to proceed from there?
Thank you. The paragraph continues, Ms. Kay, to say these non-SSA members were not subject to the formal recruitment and vetting processes of the SSA. You've confirmed that already, as I understand it.
Yes.
The sentence continues, but were rather co-workers not formally employed by the SSA. How would you and the rest of the team, and including the sponsor or co-sponsor, Mr. Y, have understood the term co-workers? What does that term mean?
I am not sure what it means because it's not contained in our operational directives that govern the covert operations. It's just a term that was coined, as far as we know, only in the MPD, when it comes to the operational side. But I'm not sure what it means because even when we read various documents and submissions that were compiled by CDSO members, they use co-workers and sources or agents interchangeably. So I'm not sure what it means.
Right. Can you comment as to whether they were formally employed by the SSA, directly employed by the SSA?
The evidence that I've looked at that is at our disposal was that, I think we'll address it later in this affidavit, is that these people were given contracts, but when we analyze those contracts, nobody signed on behalf of the SSA, but these people were made to sign and made to believe that they'll be, after 5 years, they'll be absorbed into the organization. So I'm not sure if that is legal, as there's no one representing the SSA in that particular contract. So based on that, I don't think they were formally employed by the SSA.
Right. The sentence or the paragraph continues, they were given access to SSA funds and resources and provided with firearms from the SSA armory. Do you have knowledge of that?
Yes, I do.
And is it correct?
Yes, it is correct.
The paragraph continues, through the CDSO, that's the Chief Directorate Special Operations, the SSA assumed responsibility for President Zuma's food and toxin security, his physical security, and the static protection of the President's aircraft. Did that knowledge come to your attention? Do you share that knowledge?
Yes, I do. I do know. I'm aware of this.
Continues, in doing so, funds and resources which should have been utilized by legitimate intelligence structures were channeled to this parallel structure, serving the interests of President Zuma rather than the national interest. Do you agree with that conclusion?
Yes, I do.
Paragraph 4.8 is a summary, but it is useful and it is worth placing on record. And if you disagree with any part of the summary, would you please tell the Chair? It says, recruitment and selection of this private force took place outside formal structures. Secondly, at least part of the training was done beyond the borders of South Africa and not by formal training structures within South Africa. Thirdly, persons within this force were armed and financed by SSA. Fourthly, at least some were deployed to various security structures within South Africa. I'll come back to that one in a moment. It is apparent that they were accountable to Ambassador Lomo and served the interests of President Zuma. And lastly, they performed their duties outside formal SSA structures, at least initially. Apart from paragraph 4, or apart from the sentence which reads, at least some were deployed to various security structures within South Africa, do you agree with that summary?
I'm not sure about the 4.8.6. So I have no comment on that one, but I'm not going to say I agree with it. I'm not sure what it means.
Right. And 4.8.4, I take it.
Well, I'm sorry, Mr. Pretorius.
Sorry.
It seems to mean that whatever their duties were, they did not perform them within SSA structures, at least initially. They seemed to have performed their duties, whatever their duties were, outside of SSA. Does that help you understand what it means? Ms. Kay?
Chairperson, what I can say is that if some of the duties, SO would be deployed to, whether it's the provinces or whatever, the officials and co-workers as well. But you would find that the provinces are actually not fed with whatever they're collecting in that in that area. And apart from that, whatever they were doing, the information was not channeled through the formal channels of information management and intelligence management within the SSA. So in that respect, I would say that, but I'm not sure about this, at least initially.
Or is the position that, as far as you know, the manner in which they performed their duties, whatever their duties were, was the same throughout the period you are aware of them performing duties? There would not be any initially, and maybe later it's different.
Yes, yes.
Yes, you know them to have been doing whatever their duties were in the same way throughout that you were aware of them.
Chair, could you please repeat that?
Okay. Are you aware of only one way in which they were performing their duties, whatever their duties were? In other words, you are not in a position to say initially this is how they perform their duties and later they perform them differently.
Yes, I am not aware, Chair, because even if you engage with the people involved, they don't actually divulge fully what their duties were. And I don't know how their duties evolved at the beginning or whenever. So that's why I would rather not comment on
Yeah.
486.
Okay, all right. Insofar as there is a reference in 486 to them performing duties outside formal SSA structures, you have said that they would go to provinces, and I'm just trying to understand that because you did say something, even though you are saying you would rather not comment. Would the position be that, as far as you understand the position, they would use the infrastructure of SSA for performing their duties whenever they needed to, but they themselves were not part of any formal structure at SSA?
Maybe
Are you
I should
able?
explain my understanding in terms of how they operated.
Yeah.
By way of an example.
Yes.
There is a period, a 6-month period, where there are about 22 to 25 members of SO traveled across the country. They would spend a month in a province, another month in another province, 6 consecutive months. And that would include admin, HR, everybody, even general workers. And they would just say it's for operational purposes. So, but it is my understanding that most of the provinces didn't understand what they were doing there. But
Yes.
ultimately, it was costing the organization a lot of money for all the people to spend a month, 6 months, 6 consecutive months in various places. So I'm not sure if that helps in terms of my understanding.
Yes, but do you know whether whenever, for example, they were in a particular province, they would go to the SAA offices in that province and make use of the facilities there?
No, I don't know.
You don't know?
I don't know any of that.
Okay, all right.
Yes.
But other than 4.8.6, are you in agreement with the rest of that summary starting from 4.8.1 to 4.8.5 that Mr. Pretorius gave earlier?
I'm in agreement with 4.8.1, 4.8.2, 4.8.3, 4.8.5.
Okay, 4.8.4 you are not in agreement with, or you are not sure about? Or you are sure you are?
No, as I indicated earlier, I'm not sure about the deployment in the security cluster.
Okay, all right. Okay, so you are in agreement with 4.8.1, 4.8.2, 4.8.3, and 4.8.5. You are not sure
Yes,
about
Chairperson.
4.8.6 and 4.8.4. You agree?
Yes.
Yeah, okay, all right. Mr. Pretorius?
As I understand it, Ms. Kay, you are not saying that
Yes.
4.8.4 and 4.8.6 are, to your knowledge, incorrect. You're saying you don't know. Is that correct?
Yes, I don't know.
Then if we go on then to paragraph 4.9, you talk, or Mr. Y talks, of a restructuring of the SSA. I take it you will agree that this restructuring must be distinguished from the amalgamation restructuring that has been spoken about by other witnesses. This is another form of restructuring. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Paragraph 4.10 goes into detail, and it says on 27 December 2011, a proposal compiled by Mr. Nosi, the then acting director domestic branch, was recommended by Mr. Dennis Lomo, the then acting DG, for Minister Cwele's approval. This proposal is included in File 1 of SSA bundle and is marked Annexure A. This recommendation sought Minister Cwele's authorization for the following structural changes within the SSA. Before we go to the following allegations in the paragraph, we could just identify the document for reference purposes, please.
Before you do that, Mr. Pretorius, to the extent that Mr. Wise's affidavit may have references to file 1, file 2, file 3, because I think you said that you put those into one file. It might be a good idea that in the one file that you put all of that in, there should be sections which can represent what was in file 1 as he knew it, and what was in file 2 as he saw it, so that one can then say into the record, when he refers to file 1, that will be section so and so in this bundle, and so on.
Yes, that will make research and review easier, Chair.
Yeah.
And we will do that. We will divide the single file into 3 dividers. File 1, there's a reference to the file given by the SSA to the Commission.
Yes, yeah.
File 1 of 3. If you go to SSA Bundle 1 or Exhibit YY1, Annexure A is marked with a divider, a green divider, A. It's at page 6 of SSA 1. Do you see that?
Yes, I do, Chair.
Is this the document referred to?
I'm sorry, what page on this?
Page 6.
Oh, page 6.
Black numbers.
Okay, thank you. Yeah.
It's a declassified document. Is this the document that is being referred to in paragraph 4.10?
Yes, Chair.
Its contents are referred to in the following paragraphs, so we can put that aside for one moment and go over the page. There are 3 paragraphs which deal with the structural changes recommended in that document. The first, in paragraph 410.1, is the relocation of the Chief Directorate Special Operations from the line function authority of the Deputy Director Domestic Intelligence to the Deputy Director Counterintelligence. Is that fact within your knowledge, that this was the recommendation?
Yes.
Secondly, in 4.10.2, the relocation of the cover support unit from the Office of the Director SSA Domestic Branch to the Office of the Deputy Director Counterintelligence. Is that within your knowledge?
Yes, it is.
And thirdly, in 4.10.3, the establishment of the Directorate Presidential Security Support, PSS, within the existing Chief Directorate Special Operations. Is that also part of the recommendation to your knowledge?
That is correct.
Right. The import of these structural changes appears later in the affidavit, but to foreshadow it, it's a centralization of counterintelligence, special operations, or an amalgamation really of special operations and cover support within a single, or within the authority of the Deputy Director Counterintelligence, a single division. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Right. Paragraph 4.11 says, these 3 structural changes were approved by Minister Kusela on the same day that they were recommended to him, namely 27 December 2011. This was shortly before Ambassador Lomo's appointment on 18 January 2012, which would see him step into the much expanded role of General Manager Special Operations, and a year later to the position of Deputy Director Counterintelligence. In short, Ambassador Lomo, it appears, would become the head of this amalgamated organization or sub-organization. Do I understand the position correctly, and do you agree with it?
Yes, I do.
Paragraph 4.12 reads, the nature of the restructuring sought and recommended, and the manner in which it was addressed, indicated that there was a perceived need to expedite a process of, quote, realigning and refocusing the available operational resources within the realm of counterintelligence. In short, the CDSO, Chief Directorate Special Operations, and the Cover Support Unit were relocated to counterintelligence, and the Presidential Security Support Service was established under the Chief Directorate Special Operations. The proposed restructuring thus entailed a significant concentration of power in the Office of the Deputy Director Counterintelligence and envisaged a leading strategic role for the Chief Directorate Special Operations. Those observations, are they firstly within your knowledge, and do you agree with them?
Yes, they are within my knowledge.
Do you agree with them insofar as they are conclusions drawn?
The conclusion that it was its most significant concentration of power.
Yes.
I'm not sure, but the rest of that I agree with,
All right.
because that's factual.
Right.
Before you proceed, Mr. Pretorius, just for the transcribers, in reading paragraph 4.12, Mr. Pretorius indicated that before the word realigning, you open quotes, but you forgot to mention where you close quotes. The quotes would be closed after the two words counterintelligence. Yeah, that's fine. That's just for the transcribers.
Yes, thank you, Chair.
Let's continue.
So one could draw one's own conclusions from the facts there. You don't take any issue with the facts contained in paragraph 4.12, as opposed to the conclusion.
Yes, save for that last sentence that refers to the significant concentration of power. So I agree with 4.12, just up to CDSO.
Thank you.
In other words, it's the
second last sentence.
In other words, it's the last sentence of paragraph 4.12 that you are not able to associate yourself with.
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
Let me understand what you're saying. Are you saying that there was no significant concentration of power as far as you are concerned, or that you're not sure that you could agree with the way it's described here?
I'm not sure if I can agree with the way it's described.
Okay, thank you. 4.13 reads, the general motivation for centralizing these key assets within counterintelligence was explained with reference to immediate identified security deficiency that had left the president vulnerable to all sorts of threats. Now, I'm not going to ask you to agree or not to agree with what the motivation said, but if you look at paragraph 4.13, 4.14, and 4.15, it refers to the motivation for the centralization of these entities. It refers to the reason advanced for the relocation of the Chief Directorate Special Operations, and the explanation given for the relocation of the Cover Support Unit. We've described the facts above, but what happens in paragraph 4.13, 4.14, and 4.15 at the hand of Mr. Y is he questions the motivation, reasons, and explanation given for this restructuring. If you could take a moment to look at it and tell us whether you share his views or not. These are really views expressed.
I have read that, Chair, and where it says, on 4.13, where it says was explained with reference to, open quote, immediate identified security deficiencies, close quote. And and also that had left the president, open quote, vulnerable to all sorts of threats, close quotes. I agree that I have a problem with this motivation because there was no threat assessment attached to this very document. It's just stating that there was immediate identified security deficiencies and what are vulnerable, President vulnerable to all sorts of threats. So having read that, I agree with what Mr. Y indicated in his affidavit.
To be complete, he did say, or does say in the last 3 lines of 413, vague references were made in the proposal to the role of the media in undermining of the office of the presidency, but no intelligence assessment or evidence was provided in support of this.
Yes.
You agree with that?
Yes, I do.
Just to make sure I understand what you agree with and what you don't agree with on 4.13, Ms. K. As I understand it, the first sentence, which is 3 lines, simply says what was in the motivation. It says the general motivation that was given for this centralizing of these key assets within counterintelligence was explained with reference to, and he quotes, immediate identified security deficiencies. In other words, he's saying this is what you would find, this is what they said. And he says it was said that those immediate identified security deficiencies had left the president, and he quotes again, vulnerable to all sorts of threats. In other words, as I understand it, he is simply saying this is what the motivation that was provided said. Do you know this to be correct? Namely, this is the motivation that was given as he describes it in that first sentence, or are you not sure about that?
I align myself with the view that he expresses in that same paragraph where he says vague references were made in the proposal to the role of the media in undermining what the office of the presidency, but no intelligence assessments or evidence was provided in support of this. So I do agree that stating it in the way that it was in that motivation was actually very vague.
Okay, that seems, what you have just said seems to suggest that you might not be sure with regard to the first sentence, but you are quite comfortable that the second sentence is true, is correct.
No, Chair. I am comfortable with the first sentence because what is in the quotes is taken directly from the document that is in evidence that we had analyzed. So I am comfortable with it because it's factual. It's stated there.
Okay. No, that's fine then. Yes, Mr. Pretorius.
Thank you, Chair. If we go then to 4.14, where the reason advanced is quoted in that paragraph.
Pardon?
If you look at paragraph 14, 4.14,
yes, I see that.
Right? There, the deponent, Mr. Y, talks about the reason advanced for the relocation of the CDSO. Do you see that?
Yes, I do.
And it merely quotes the motivating document. Are you happy with that?
Yes.
You agree with that? They merely quotes
Yes,
from the document. And then paragraph 4.15 deals with the proposed relocation of the cover support unit and its explanation on the basis set out there to provide backstopping. What is backstopping?
It's arrangements that are made to support cover structures, operations, identities. So in that covert environment, or even just in terms of operations, it's actually that is there.
Right. The affidavit continues, although in theory the CDSO as a legitimate deep cover operational arm of the agency would benefit from a close working relationship with the cover support unit, the deployment of close protection officers does not require backstopping. Do you agree with that observation?
I partly agree, because if it's close protection officers, they are right there, they're being seen. So I don't know what backstopping would be required in terms of that. So I guess I do agree.
Yes. Continues to say, hence the rationale does not extend to the Presidential Security Support Service. Do you agree with that?
Yes, I do.
It follows, or rather what follows is the statement that it should also be noted that backstopping and proper cover support are not limited to counterintelligence operations. On the contrary, most operational activity within the SSA would require basic backstopping for the purposes of cover. The placement of the cover support unit in the counterintelligence subdivision is therefore questionable, as it renders the unit remote to other areas of operation that would benefit from its support. That is an observation. Do you agree with it?
Yes, I do.
Right. .16 continues to make certain observations in relation to the recommendation that we're dealing with. And refers to the justification given for the establishment of the Presidential Security Support. That's a matter of fact. Those quotes are there in the motivation or the recommendation document, but halfway down, the comment is made as follows: significantly, no reference was made in the proposal to existing state structures tasked with providing VIP and TSCM services, nor was there any indication that this shift in the SSA's mandate had been canvassed with other stakeholders or was even necessary. Firstly, what does TSCM stand for?
Technical surveillance countermeasures.
Right, what are they?
I think it entails issues of like sweeping for bugs. Yeah, I'm not going to expand further on that.
In any event, the comments made after the word significantly to the end of the paragraph are largely factual. Do you agree with them?
I do agree with it.
The last sentence read, instead, the submission creates the impression that VIP protection was the responsibility of SSA, with outlining the origin of this doctrinal shift or its approval by the South African Police Service and the South African National Defence Force. Do you agree with that observation? It's largely factual.
Yes, this is factual. There was no mention of the roles that the other departments had to play in that space. So in essence, it created an impression that there was a sort of like a vacuum in that space without actually providing an in-depth threat assessment in that regard.
Then 4.17 describes how the document that we're considering described the recruitment and appointment of 20 officers. The last sentence says, the impression created in the recommendation is that these officers, in inverted commas, were legitimately recruited and employed by the SSA. Do you agree with that? We will go on to 4. Yes. The next comment is relevant to that. 4.18, however, the headhunted officers listed in attachment A of the recommendation are in fact the same individuals who were recruited and trained under the direction of Ambassador Lomo in 2008-2009. They had not been subject to the official recruitment and vetting processes of the SSA, yet 2 years later they were absorbed into a newly established Presidential Security Support Service, coinciding with Ambassador Lomo's appointment as General Manager of the CDSO. Again, that's factual. Do you agree with it?
Yes, I do.
Then 4.19, Dorothy played and that word should read Dorothy, if you could note that, please, Ms. Kay. Dorothy played a key role in the implementation of these structural changes. In February 2012, she was seconded from Mr. Nusi's office to assist Ambassador Lomo as the acting, well, I'm not going to mention the post because that might also reveal her identity. But do you agree with that factual observation?
Yes, I do. Yes, I do.
And then...
Mr. Pretorius, will you remember to arrange for Mr. Y to do a supplementary to just correct that?
Yes,
So
will do.
It should be read to say Dorothy.
Yes. The word Dorothy should be inserted where appropriate. I won't mention the name it should replace.
Yeah.
Anyway, that person, and I'm not going to mention, Ms. Kay, the appointment in 2013 referred to in this paragraph, I'll go on. But Dorothy facilitated the compilation of contracts with so-called co-workers, their placement within the CDSO, as well as the preparation of submissions relating to their registration and payment. Do you agree with that factual observation?
Yes, I agree with it. In fact, this is what we heard directly from her during an interview.
All right, thank you.
As well as another HR person that was assisting her.
Thank you. 4.20, shortly after Ambassador Lomo's appointment on 18 January 2012, the scope of his authority as General Manager of Special Operations was further expanded. While the 27 December 2011 restructuring brought the cover support unit within the counterintelligence subdivision, I am aware that urgent approval was sought in February 2012 for a further structural realignment to bring the cover support unit under special operations. Is that a correct recordal of the facts?
I believe so, although this document was never, the copy of this document that I saw was not signed.
All right. The effect of this proposal, which was compiled by Dorothy, was that all 3 units, the Chief Directorate Special Operations, the Presidential Security Support Service, and the Cover Support Unit were brought under Ambassador Lomo's control as General Manager Special Operations. Is that a correct recordal of the facts?
Yes.
All right. Now, there's an observation made in paragraph 4.21, and I'll invite your comment on that as to whether you agree with it or not. The timeline set out above demonstrates that the restructuring within the SSA to centralize control of counterintelligence operations under Ambassador Lomo was a plan in the making long before he was officially appointed in January 2012. The groundwork for this restructured and repurposed CDSO was laid by Ambassador Lomo in 2008-2009 with his recruitment and training of the co-workers who would subsequently be deployed for the President's projects at the SSA. Those two sentences, do you have any comment? Do you agree with them? Are they reasonable observations?
I agree with them, Chair.
Thank you. It continues, the paragraph that is continues, the structural changes approved by Minister Kusela in December 2011 meant that when Ambassador Lomo was officially appointed in January 2012, the SSA's counterintelligence architecture had already been transformed in order to provide him with the power and resources to directly serve the political interests of President Zuma through intelligence operations that were clearly unconstitutional and illegal. What do you say about that conclusion?
I agree with the conclusion.
Right. Continues, under Ambassador Lomo's watch, the CDSO engaged in exponential overspending and flouted the SSA's financial, operational, and HR directives through covert mechanisms and illegal contracts. What do you say about that largely factual observation?
That is factual.
Right. 4.22, and you agree with it, do you?
Yes, I agree with it.
Thank you. 4.22, the impact, and this again is a summary, so you can comment freely. The impact of the centralization of power within counterintelligence is borne out by the activities subsequently carried out by the CDSO, the Presidential Security Support Service and Cover Support Unit, as detailed below. In summary, the consequences of these structural changes were 4.22.1, the infiltration into the SSA by co-workers who bypassed official recruitment, training and vetting processes. 4.22.2, the overreach of the duly authorized mandate of the SSA. 4.22.3, illegal activities carried out by a parallel counterintelligence structure under the guise of covert operations. 4.22.4, executive interference in operational activities. 4.22.5, the rampant looting of SSA funds, and 4.22.6, the illegal use of SSA firearms. Would you comment on some or all and inform the Chair to what extent you agree or disagree with those conclusions?
I agree with all of them. All of these conclusions.
Thank you.
Chair.
Thank you, Ms. Kay. In paragraph 5, you deal in some detail.
Mr. White deals in some detail.
Yes.
Yes.
True. In paragraph 5, the Directorate for Presidential Security Support is dealt with in some detail by Mr. Y. Let's go through it paragraph by paragraph. 5.1. The first sentence says that the extent to which the activities conducted by the SSA's CDSO, and CDSO for reference is the Chief Directorate Special Operations, exceeded the duly authorized mandate of the agency. Is that a correct statement of fact?
Yes, it is.
Continues, the paragraph continues, the establishment and operation of the Directorate for Presidential Security Support represents the clearest example of mandate overreach by the CDSO under Ambassador Lomo's leadership. You agree with that statement?
Yes, provided that everybody understands that we are referring here to Ambassador Tulani Lomo.
Right. Thank you for reminding us. More generally, it reflects the shift.
I'm sorry, Mr. Pretorius. Well, maybe let's take this opportunity for me to get clarity, because there are two Lomos here. I've seen a reference to Ambassador Lomo, and then I think there is Tulani Lomo and Dennis Lomo. Now, Ms. K, you say, provided the understanding is that this reference to Ambassador Lomo is a reference to Ambassador Tulani Lomo. I'm wondering whether they were both referred to as ambassadors or were ambassadors, both of them at some stage. Is there only one of them who was an ambassador? They were both ambassadors at some stage?
Yeah. Yes, Chair.
Or which means, therefore, in the affidavit, wherever there is Ambassador Lomo without a reference to the name, it might create difficulties unless the context indicates which one. Such as if
Yes,
one was, if only a particular one was associated with DSO, CDSO, then if that's the context, then we would know that it's the one who was associated with that operation.
Yes, Chairperson.
Yes.
As I understand it,
Okay.
Ms. K, when you refer to Ambassador Lomo in this affidavit of Mr. Y, you're referring to Ambassador Tulani Lomo, is that correct?
Yes,
All right.
that's correct.
Oh, okay. So for purposes of this, of Mr. Y's affidavit, where there's reference to Ambassador Lomo, you are referring to Ambassador Tulani Lomo. Ms.
Yes,
K?
I would say so, Chair.
Yes. Okay. Okay, it's just that it's important because serious allegations are made, so one doesn't want to understand certain allegations to be attached to somebody that was not intended. So it's important to understand who is being referred to in regard to what allegations. Okay, Mr. Pretorius.
The remaining sentence in paragraph 5.1 is the last sentence. Do you have any comment in regard to the sentence which refers to the shift in intelligence philosophy represented by this restructuring? It's been given by other witnesses.
Yes, I agree with that.
And then 5.2 repeats evidence that is contained earlier. We can go to 5.3, which refers to the presidential handbook, as does 5.4. Do you take any issue with the fact that the presidential handbook sets out the extent of administrative, logistical, and security and general support services to be rendered to the President, the Deputy President, their spouses, and children?
Where are we now?
Paragraph
sorry, I'm lost in
5.3.
terms of the document.
Yes, sorry. 5.3 on page 361 of bundle SSA02. Quotes from the presidential handbook and provides in summary that the presidential handbook deals in detail with the various services to be rendered to the president, including security services.
Yes, I agree.
And paragraph 5.4 also points out
I'm sorry, Mr. Pretorius, we've got to always make sure we know what she agrees to. You have read paragraph 5.4, Ms. K, haven't you?
Coming to 5.4, Chair.
Or was that not the one you were talking about?
Yeah, I was talking about 5.3, but your comments are valid in relation to both.
Yeah, okay. You see, I thought we were already at 5.4. Okay, all right. I think that the way you have been doing it, Mr. Pretorius, is good to actually read so that she is able to say, that's what I'm not agreeing to.
Yes,
That's
and
what
given
I'm
the circumstances of the nature of this evidence and its format, it's perhaps wise to go slower rather than
Yes, no, that's fine, yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Ms. Kay, I hope you'll bear with us then. The paragraph
Yes.
5.3 reads, the Presidential Handbook sets out the extent of the administrative, logistical, security and general support services to be rendered to the President, Deputy President and their spouses and children. Do you accept the correctness of that statement?
I have to accept the correctness of that statement because if that's the objective of the document,
Yes.
I can't dispute it.
Yes, sure.
Well, you can only agree with the statement if you have seen the Presidential Handbook and you have seen that that's what it does.
Yes, we did have a copy of the Presidential
Yes.
Handbook.
Okay, no,
And
that's fine.
this part was actually drawn from there.
Yes,
And
okay.
the only thing that we are not certain of is the year, because sometimes the handbooks are revised, but the one that we could get our hands on
Did have
stipulated
this.
the roles as reflected here.
Okay, no, that's fine. That's good enough.
And the one you did get your hands on and I assume provided to the investigators, the commission, is in fact in the bundle. Oh, it's in a legislation bundle which you do have, Chair, so we can cross-check that if necessary. In any event, a stated objective, the paragraph records, of the Presidential Handbook is to provide, quote, a concise operational guide to relevant government departmental staff with clearly indicated responsibilities and duties, and by implication, lines of accountability, unquote. Do you see that?
Yes, I do.
And again, whilst you may not remember the exact words, I take it you don't take issue with that. We can check it.
No, I don't.
Right. 5.4 goes further to say that the Presidential Handbook outlines that, firstly, the responsibility for the President's medical and health care resides with the Surgeon General and the South African Military and Health Service Unit of the SANDF. Secondly, the South African Police Service is obliged to take, quote, full responsibility for the protection and security of the President and Deputy President, unquote, with the intelligence services providing regular and comprehensive security assessments. Do you agree with those observations, with those facts, really?
Yes, I do.
According to the handbook...
Yes, I do.
Thank you. According to the handbook, protection and security measures of the President and Deputy President include, but are not limited to, the following. 5.4.1, regular security assessments in conjunction with the intelligence agencies. 5.4.2, static protection at all official and private residences and office accommodation used from time to time during the term of office. 5.4.3, in-transit protection during all domestic and international movements. 5.4.4, regular vetting of protectors, medical personnel and other staff. 5.4.5, screening of service providers. 5.4.6, static protection of aircraft. And 5.4.7, regular revision of ICT security systems. Is that your understanding of the handbook's provisions in regard to protection and security measures relating to the President and Deputy President?
Yes.
5.5, I'm sorry, did you want to add something?
No, nothing.
5.5, notwithstanding this clear assignment of responsibility and the existing structures rendering medical and security support services to the President, the SSA established the Directorate for Presidential Security Support to perform exactly these same functions. In terms of formal documentation outlining the mandate of the Presidential Security Support Service, the Directorate comprised the following functions: 551, VIP protection; 5.5.2, cybersecurity; 5.5.3, technical surveillance countermeasures, and 5.5.4, toxicology. Is that what was contained in the formal documentation outlining the mandate of the Presidential Security Support Service?
I just want to refer to the document so that I don't misquote and
Thank you.
confirm without. Yes, this is accurate. This is accurate, Chair.
Thank you.
Thank you. If you go to paragraph 5.6, Ms. Kay, the first sentence reads, this not only broadened the mandate of the SSA without following legislative processes, but effectively usurped functions that were duly assigned to the South African Police Service Presidential Protection Unit and the South African Military and Health Services Unit of the SANDF. We'll come to what witnesses said in a moment. The first sentence is an observation of the implications of what you have spoken about and what Mr. Y has spoken about above. Do you agree with the observation in 5.6, first sentence?
I do, on the basis that among the documents that we have, and also in our engagements with the relevant people who were responsible for these responsibilities within SSA, we could not trace whether there were MOUs or with these departments which were coordinating the work, you know, that would indicate that this service was requested from SSA. So in that regard, I do agree that they did usurp the functions. But if there is a document out there that can support that there was an agreement, then my view would be different.
Right. Well, the next sentence deals with that. It says, according to witness reports received during our investigations, the Presidential Security Support Service functioned without any memorandum of understanding with the SAPS or SANDF regarding the provision of protection services to the President and Deputy President of the country. That sentence says not only that you didn't find one, but that you were told that there wasn't one. Is that what you were told?
Yes, when we spoke to Ms. Dorothy, that's what we were told.
Right. The paragraph continues, whilst the legitimate SSA channels would receive requests for support, such as the provision of threat and risk assessments, secure communication, and TSCM, these were used as the justification for the deployment of the Presidential Security Support Service. As a result of these unclear lines of communication and a lack of agreement and coordination with the relevant stakeholders, tensions were reported between members of the CDSO's Presidential Security Support Unit and members of the SAPS Presidential Protection Unit to the detriment of the effective working of the protective services of SAPS. Is that a fair observation in your view? Do you agree with it?
On the first one, where we talk about legitimate SSA channels would receive the requests, I agree with that because it meant that PSS would still, under SO, would still deploy their own people and do whatever outside of these formal channels. And also in terms of the unclear lines of communication, there were reports of tensions from the people who worked in this PSS from the SSA side. Some of the implicated individuals did indicate that there was that tension that existed because of this, this arrangement.
The only part that you haven't commented on is whether this series of arrangements was to the detriment of the effective working of the protected services of the South African Police Services. Can you comment on that?
I cannot confirm that it was to the detriment of effective working of the protected, because I have not engaged with, and the team has not engaged with SABS, and we have not gotten a view from that side. Right. So I cannot confirm that.
Right. It appears, Ms. Kay, that you are being very cautious and careful to restrict your confirmation of the correctness of the affidavit of Mr. Y to matters that you are reasonably certain of. Is that a correct observation?
I'm not being overly cautious, but I have to be conscious of the terminology that is used and what it means, what its implications are. So if I'm not sure and I don't have direct evidence of the detriment that was caused, I cannot support and say and come here and act and speak authoritatively on that.
Yes, I understand that.
For instance, I did not see any documentation that showed any complaints from SABS in this regard. All I saw were requests and itineraries sent from SABS PPU to SSA. Yes. But they would say for TSCM, that's all.
Right. Ms. Kay, please don't misunderstand me. I'm not being critical at all. In fact, quite the opposite. It does appear, and it's a good thing for the evidence that is being led, that you are exercising the caution that you are. So I'm not being critical at all, and I trust that you will continue giving evidence in this way. Let's not misunderstand one another.
Well, I also wanted to say exactly the same thing, Ms. Kay, that Mr. Pretorius was not criticizing you. He was actually meaning to say you are being cautious, and that's a good thing. So that which you confirm, everyone will know you confirm because you believe you have knowledge of that and there are proper grounds. And when you are not sure, you make it clear that you are not sure, and therefore you are not going to confirm something that you are not sure about. That might not mean you're saying it's not true. It might simply mean that you are not in a position to say whether it's true or not. And obviously where you say it's, where your understanding is that it is not true, you must feel free to say this part is not true. Or as far as I know, the position is different. And as far as I know, this is the position. So that's good. It's not a bad thing.
Yes. And Ms. Kay, as the day drags on, or as the days drag on, please continue along the same lines. Paragraph 5.7 reads, according to members within the Presidential Security Support Service, they were responsible for security around accommodation, venues, routes, and crowds in relation to the President and Deputy President. Is that correct?
Yes, that's what was indicated to us.
Right. Members of the unit would be deployed as quote, advanced teams, unquote, to detect any potential risk or threat to the President or Deputy President when traveling. Is that correct? Is that what you were told?
Yes, that is correct.
The information, if any, that was generated from these trips would be channeled only to Ambassador Lomo and not the formal information management structures or structure within the SSA. Is that a correct statement? Or is that what you were told?
Yes, it is a correct statement.
Right. There is no indication that threat and risk assessments, which according to the Presidential Handbook should have been provided by intelligence, were made available to the South African Police Service or the SANDF regularly or at all. Do you have a comment on that? Is it correct?
I think there is no indication that is true, but I think I have no comment on this one because it's very ambiguous for me because I see it as if it says there is no indication that threat and risk assessments, which according to the president should have been provided by intelligence, were made available to SABC and SANDF regularly or at all. I don't have proof of that. I don't know. All I know, I can say is that we have not seen any intelligence or intelligence products that came from this unit or SO in general. So that's why I'm not sure whether to agree with the statement or not.
All right, we can leave it there. Thank you. And go to paragraph 5.8.
Yeah.
In summary, a separate and discrete, which I suppose should be spelt in this context, DISCRETE, force, although it was also discrete, was established within the SSA, reporting to and accountable to in the main Ambassador Lomo. The lawful structure for the personal protection of the President, namely SAPS, was entirely sidelined. Thus far, can you comment on those two sentences or the content of those two sentences?
I don't have any issues with the first sentence. However, the second one that says the lawful structure for the personal protection of the President, namely SAPS, was entirely sidelined, I don't totally agree with that. Mainly because there was, if I've seen documents that are bearing the emblem of SAPS and are signed by a senior member of SAPS that are being sent to Ambassador Thulani Lomo, then I can't say they were entirely sidelined. And because I was not on the ground, I can't. So it may have caused tension, but I'm not sure about the word entirely.
Right. Would you partially agree to the extent that there was a degree of sidelining?
Yes, I would partially agree.
Right. If we can go on, the next sentence says that, and obviously refers to the information available to Mr. Y. He says, my information is that Ambassador Lomo reported directly to President Zuma. Do you have any knowledge of that statement? Or the import of that statement?
I think it's something that we deduced, not that there's any proof that I've seen that he was doing exactly that. The only information that I can confirm is that some of the people that were involved in some of these projects carried out by CDSO did indicate that they were reporting directly to President Zuma. In fact, some of the people that we interviewed, in fact, one did indicate that they were reporting directly to the President. So I don't know whether that would be supporting that Ambassador Thulani Lomo reported directly. I don't know, because all of those people were reporting to him. So maybe it follows that he reported to the President.
Yeah, so what you're saying in relation to that sentence, as I understand it, that people in the unit subordinate to Ambassador Lomo told you that they reported directly to President Zuma. Am I correct?
Yes, they said, one of them even said they felt very powerful because they were reporting directly to the president.
Right. And then the last sentence reads, in the result, President Zuma benefited from an SSA-based protection service financed and controlled by the SSA. Let's go as far as that for the moment. Do you agree with that part of the last sentence in paragraph 5.8?
Saying that they were deployed, SSA, there was an entire unit just focusing on that within CDSO, I would say that that sentence is correct.
Right. The protection service is said in this sentence to be possibly performing intelligence functions. Do you have a comment on that?
We assume that all SSA members, because as much as CDSO had the core workers who were non-SSA members, there were also members of SSA who were involved there, a handful of them. So I should assume that they were performing intelligence functions. So, yeah.
You've already confirmed. I'm sorry I interrupted you. Do you have anything to add?
No. I think they were performing those intelligence functions, but whether these were in line with our mandate or you know, whether it also followed our information management system, whatever, how that information was channeled, I cannot comment on that. But
Right.
I'm assuming that they were performing intelligence functions.
Thank you. And the last part of that sentence, as it had been trained to do, I think you've confirmed earlier that the training involved intelligence training. Am I correct?
Yes.
Let's move on then, if we may, to the toxicology unit described in paragraph 5.9. The first sentence reads, in 2012, a toxicology unit was established within the CDSO under Ambassador Lomo's management. Is that a correct statement?
Yes, it is correct. I'm just not sure about the date, the year, but it is correct, the rest of the sentence.
Thank you. Paragraph continues, there were no indications that this unit was established legitimately with even an attempt to comply with the threshold governance prescripts of the SSA. Is that a correct statement?
Yes, it is.
Ambassador Lomo, the paragraph continues, in conjunction with a non-SSA member, Dr. Mandisa Mokoena, were involved in the recruitment and training of individuals in the toxicology environment to capacitate this new unit. Is that a correct statement?
Yes, according to the witness statement that we have, yes.
This was done in conjunction with an organization referred to as a Foreign International Development Agency for Food, Safety and Security. Now, we've taken out the name of the country where this Food and Safety Security Agency existed, but apart from that, are you comfortable with the contents of that sentence?
Yes, I am.
Based on our investigations, the affidavit continues, this organization does not appear to exist in any official records. Can you confirm that?
Yes, when we did the search, we couldn't find that organization.
Right. Paragraph 5.10, the recruitment and training agreement was signed by Ambassador Lomo on behalf of the Republic of South Africa and by an unidentified representative on behalf of the foreign organization, and again, where you read the word foreign, the name of the country has been taken out and replaced by the word foreign. But the
Yes.
first sentence, is that a correct reflection of the facts?
Yes, it is.
In terms of the agreement, the foreign side would provide course curriculum, training, equipment, and installation with an overall implementation date of 20 January 2013. Is that a correct statement?
Yes, it is.
During 2012, the affidavit continues, individuals were identified through referrals and invited to submit their curriculum vitae. 4 individuals were selected, 2 toxicologists and 2 lab assistants. The individuals were not interviewed, but were allegedly vetted and sent for polygraph examinations conducted by the foreign country before attending a 3-week course in their country, in other words, the foreign country, in December 2012. Is that in accordance with the knowledge that you have of this project?
That is what we were told by one of the toxicologists.
Thank you. 511 says the toxicology unit was located within the Directorate for Presidential Security Support in terms of organizational design. However, it also fell within a CDSO project called Project Kusela, KHUSELA, previously called Project Accurate, of which Dr. McQuena was the project manager. Is that correct?
Yes, that is correct. But I have to also mention that while Project Kusela was purported to have replaced Project Accurate still continued while Kusela was in existence.
Thank you. And we deal with Project Kusela in more detail below, but let's continue. The affidavit reads, the toxicology unit's laboratory, including a vivarium, and I'll come back to that in a moment, was established in an SSA safe house in Waterkloof. Is that correct?
That's what we were told.
Yes.
I don't know if it's correct, but that's what we were told.
Right. A vivarium, I suppose, to test poisons, I don't know, let me not speculate, is a container that contains live animals. Do you know that?
I don't know what it is either.
In any event. There appears to have been, the affidavit continues, a double dipping of funds as members of the toxicology unit reported to the Directorate for Presidential Security Support for their travelling funds, subsistence and travel allowance and accommodation costs, while funds were also paid to Project Kusela as part of the CDSO operational expenditure. Is that a correct statement of fact?
That's how it appears based on the information that we gathered.
Does that include written information or documentary information?
The documentary information shows that people were taking TAs directly for Project Kusela, but at the same time, the people that are working under toxicology saying they were reporting to the PSS. However, whoever was leading PSS says that unit never reported to them. So that's why we were faced with this. I think we had to analyze were they traveling under PSS or were they getting money in that regard. Or what we are sure of is that there were funds that were taken directly for Project Kusela. Right. And when the settlements were done for those TAs, they attached receipts, for travel and whatever by the toxicology unit. So that's why it's not actually clear.
Do I understand you correctly that operatives within that unit drew money both under the head Project Kusela and under the head toxicology unit?
That is the suspicion. That's why we're saying it appears.
Okay, thank you for that.
Yes.
The leader of the toxicology unit, who was one of the trained toxicologists, indicated to the investigation team that she had used her own business entity called Remix, which is a pseudonym, which had been established in 2007 as a special purpose vehicle for receiving and dispersing operational funds from the SSA for this project. Is that a correct statement of fact, that you were told that?
It's not entirely accurate.
Could you
My
tell us?
understanding is that Remix had been established in 2007, independent of the SSA. So the person indicated that their company was an environmental kind of company, and later on, when because they were receiving the 1.8 million rand a month cash from SO operatives, they felt that it was too much to handle that money in cash. So the owner of the company offered Ambassador Thulani Lomo that they can use her company to disperse these funds. So that's the situation. So I think it's not completely accurate the way it's put there.
Right. Paragraph 5.12 reads, members of the toxicology unit were deployed in line with the other presidential security support services, such as technical surveillance countermeasures, TSCM, to all areas that the president would be exposed to both internationally and domestically. They were responsible for checking rooms, kitchens, and dining spaces that would be occupied by the president, but not the presidential aircraft. In one document, Ambassador Lomo is cited as a donor to the establishment of the toxicology unit and referred to as chief. Is that a correct record of what you were told or what the investigation established?
The investigation team was informed by one of the toxicologists that they never checked the presidential aircraft. So that part is correct. The second part, which refers to, in one document, Ambassador Lomo is cited as a donor to the establishment of the toxicology unit and referred to as chief, that is not completely accurate. He was referred to as Chief Thulani Lomo in documents where there was sort of like an agreement with that foreign international development agency that we spoke about earlier. So he appeared there as a co-sponsor for the project, not necessarily for a donor for the establishment of the toxicology unit. I hope I'm making sense.
Yes, thank you. If we can go then to paragraph 5.13, the allegations or the statements set out in this paragraph are important, so I will deal with them sentence by sentence. The first sentence reads, however, the actual purpose of the toxicology unit is questionable, and it appears to have had little impact since its establishment in 2012. Let me continue because that sentence really foreshadows what is to come. Notwithstanding the specialized training and considerable resources at its disposal, the toxicology unit failed to detect or prevent the alleged poisoning of the former president in 2014. Thus far, what do you say about the contents of that paragraph, please?
I would be more comfortable with the paragraph if the first sentence is talking about having little impact since its establishment in 2012. I think there needs to be a qualifier there because we should say the toxicology unit under the the umbrella of CDSO, because ultimately there is still a toxicology unit within SSA, but it's not necessarily linked to these activities. So in my view, if we're saying it appears to have had little impact since its establishment in 2012, it would then be misinterpreted to mean that we are saying the legitimate unit now that is under counterintelligence has not been effective. So I'm not in a position to say that.
So do I understand you correctly, Ms. Kay, to say that there is what you termed a legitimate toxicology unit within the SSA, and the toxicology unit we're referring to here was another unit under the CDSO? Is that correct?
Yes, that's the one that we are talking about under CDSO. However, some of the members, including the person that we interviewed, who was recruited and polygraphed by these foreign people from a foreign country, was ultimately absorbed into the toxicology unit that exists now.
Okay. But if one qualifies the first sentence by referring to the toxicology unit established under the CDSO, are you comfortable with the correctness of that statement?
Yes, I'll be comfortable with that.
Right. Okay, and the second sentence?
I agree with that, that you would have expected that they would have detected, especially because there was so much resources that were dedicated to protecting the president. This would include the VIP protection, the toxicology unit, the guarding of the plane, all of it by SSA. So you would expect that at least we could detect the poison. So I do agree with that statement.
And although on the face of it, it may seem to be a light-hearted statement, it is actually on careful examination quite serious. The next sentence reads, indeed, during an interview with a person employed by the toxicology unit, it was indicated that in all the years that they had serviced the former president, the only threat that had been detected was expired cool drinks.
Yes, she did indicate that to us. And yeah.
Do you deal anywhere with the budget that was allocated to this toxicology unit? If not, it's extra evidence and we should perhaps deal with it elsewhere.
Kindly repeat that, sir.
The budget that was allocated to the toxicology unit, I don't think we deal with it I don't think Mr. Y deals with it in this affidavit. Am I correct? And therefore it's not necessary.
I think it is dealt with under the item where we talk about contracts, the contract with Remix.
All right, so it is relevant to this point that a significant amount of money appears to have been spent on this unit. What amount was spent?
It was 1.8 million rand cash per month.
Right. The affidavit continues, the failure to detect the poisoning of a sitting president was either a major intelligence failure by a specialized unit that had been trained and resourced for the sole purpose, or exposes the toxicology unit as a structure used to siphon funds out of the SSA and or use such funds for other non-disclosed purposes. That comment, at least as far as its content is concerned, is fairly clear. Do you have any comment?
No, except that I agree with the statement.
Right. Let's go on then to the protection of the presidential aircraft, paragraph 5.14 reads, in November 2014, Ambassador Lomo, by then Deputy Director General Counterintelligence, instituted a project for the protection of the presidential aircraft. The rationale for the project, according to witness accounts, was that Ambassador Lomo was made aware that pilots and crew members were bringing in unauthorized individuals to sleep in the aircraft. One would have thought that there were other ways to deal with it, but let me not go there. What do you say about those first two sentences?
I think this is a correct reflection because we gathered this from an interview we had with a person who was very key in this project.
Right. The affidavit in paragraph 5.14 continues to read, no formal threat and risk assessment on the alleged concerns formed the basis of the project. Is that a correct statement as far as you're concerned?
Yes.
Continues to read, individuals selected for the project had no training or knowledge of aviation matters, yet they accepted and carried duties to guard the presidential plane and helicopter. This mandate was based on a verbal briefing from Ambassador Lomo on a purported threat. Do you agree with those statements?
I do, because this is an account from a person that was involved in that space.
Right.
And they did say they never got any training.
.515, I'll read the whole paragraph because it can be read as a single concept. Although Ambassador...
1 second, Mr. Pretorius. I think Counsel for SSA has something to say.
I'm sorry, Chair, to take my learned friend a bit back on the paragraphs 5.9 that deals with the toxicology unit. It was put to the witness, Chair, whether...
What paragraph?
I think she is under the heading 5.9.
5.9?
Yes.
Yeah.
Up to 5.13.
Yeah.
Towards the end of 5.13, my learned friend asked the witness whether, or rather, how much was spent on the toxicology unit. Her response was 1.8.
The CDSO.
No, specifically how much was spent on the unit, toxicology unit.
Oh,
not
the
CDSO.
toxicology.
And her
Yes.
response was 1.8 million rand. Now, given the fact that the toxicology unit was part, as alleged to say the least for now, was part of the CDSO, is that 1.8 a collective amount or is it specific for the toxicology unit? That's the clarity that we seek, Chair. Thank you.
So you ask whether it relates to the toxicology unit only.
That's correct.
I thought it would have been clear that it is the unit, but I may have misunderstood. Mr. Pretorius?
Well, so may have I misunderstood. I thought the question was clear, that the expenditure in relation to the toxicology unit, firstly, is dealt with elsewhere in this series of documents, but secondly was 1.8 million rand per month for the toxicology unit. Do I understand the position correctly, Ms. Kay?
I think I understand where the question comes from, because it is the 1.8 million that was taken per month was for Project Kusela, which was focusing on the toxicology segment of the work of the CDSO. So as a project. So I'm not sure whether the entire unit utilized only that amount.
So it could have been more, or do I understand you to say?
Yes, it could have been more, because the 1.8 million per month that I'm talking about only refers to kusela, which is purported to be dealing with this area exactly.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We may proceed then to
We
paragraph 5.15. You've dealt with 5.14, I understand, is that correct?
Yes, Chair.
5.15 reads, although Ambassador Lomo selected the SSA members that were tasked with protecting the presidential aircraft, the project was formally allocated to the Chief Directorate Internal Security. And involved in that Chief Directorate was a person with the pseudonym Johan, and I'm not going to mention his position either. But the affidavit continues at paragraph 5.15 to read, it is unclear why this project, which like the Presidential Security Support Service, encroached upon the SAPS mandate to render presidential protection of this kind, was set up within CDIS. It is reasonable to infer that this was done to deliberately remove all things related to the protection of the former president out of the realm of the SAPS and to instead place them under the control of Ambassador Lomo. Is that a fair representation and a correct representation of the facts in the first part of the affidavit? And secondly, the inference that is drawn, do you agree with that inference?
My understanding is that the guarding of the presidential aircraft falls within the mandate of SANDF. So as much as, so I'm not sure if this is completely correct. Maybe it's just a typo, or maybe I don't understand this completely. But otherwise, the essence of what is indicated in this paragraph, I agree with.
Right, I think the paragraph is attempts to convey that the Presidential Security Support Service encroached upon the SAPS mandate to protect the president, and the project in relation to presidential aircraft also encroached on the SAPS mandate to protect the president. Do you read it in the same way? And if so, is it correct?
No, that is inaccurate, sir.
Yeah, I think what Ms. K, I think
this is under, yes.
Ms. K, I think what Ms. K was saying previously, Mr. Pretorius, she seemed to be saying, as far as the guarding of the presidential aircraft is concerned, one can't say that this unit was removing or interfering with the mandate of the SAPS, because that is, as far as she knows, supposed to be within the mandate of SANDF. I think that's the only qualification she sought to make. So if I'm correct in understanding her in that way, she sought to say, insofar as this unit sought to guard the presidential aircraft, they may have been or they were encroaching on SANDF's mandate, but in terms of the rest, they were encroaching on SAPS mandate.
Yes,
Ms.
I
K,
understood
is that correct?
Yeah.
Ms. K, is my understanding correct of your evidence?
I think so. I think so, Chair. But I want to also clarify that.
Okay, clarify it further.
That the inclusion of Presidential Security Support Services there It's more like we're saying similarly, but it's actually not PSS that provided that service of guarding the presidential aircraft. It's actually another Chief Directorate Internal Security. I just need that to be understood.
Yes.
So it's not PSS.
So for that reason, Chair, I was going a little slower because there are a number of concepts now that are being
No, that's fine, that's fine.
included in a single sentence. So let's just try and clarify that. I think it is clear, but just for the sake of the record, let's just clear it up. The aircraft protection project resided under CDIS, am I correct?
Yes, you are correct, Chair.
It would have duplicated or encroached upon the mandate of the SANDF, is that correct?
Yes, in my understanding.
Yes. The Presidential Security Support Service resided elsewhere, Chief Directorate Special Operations, is that correct?
Yes,
And it would have encroached on the SAPS mandate to render presidential protection, is that correct?
yes, that's correct.
All right, so all those propositions are wrapped up in that sentence, but I think we've clarified with the assistance
But
of the Chair.
Sorry, Chair. I think it's important to note that both CDIS and CDSO fall under counterintelligence, which would have made both units report to Ambassador Tulani Lomo as the DDG counterintelligence.
All right, that's useful to understand. Thank you. So the next sentence, it is reasonable to infer that this was done to deliberately remove all things related to the protection of the former president out of the realm of SAPS, and to instead place them under the control of Ambassador Lomo in the various units under his control. Is that a fair representation of an inference that can be drawn?
I partially agree, mainly because one of the people that we interviewed did indicate that they think that was the aim, to take over everything, you know, around the president, particularly the protection, everything that had to do with the protection.
Yes, so we have the facts on the one hand, we have what you were told in the course of your investigation on the other hand, and we have the conclusion drawn by Mr. Y and your comments. Is that a fair summary?
Yes.
All right, let's go to 516 if we may.
I'm sorry, Mr. Pretorius, I just want to clear this. Is it correct, Ms. Kay, that all your knowledge in regard to these matters that you are sharing with the Commission is based on what you found during the investigations, either by way of documentation or what you were told by people that you interviewed in the course of conducting the Project VESA investigation?
That is 100% correct, Chair.
Yes, so that you would not have personal knowledge, you would not have personally witnessed the events as they occurred as such, but your investigations your investigation, that is Project Vesa investigation, may have revealed evidence that certain events or certain things did happen?
Yes, sir.
Okay, all right. Thank you, Mr. Pretorius.
Perhaps one should add to that your personal knowledge of the structures and personnel within SSA.
Pardon? Please repeat that.
You also have personal knowledge of the SSA organization, its structures, and the persons within the SSA. Is that correct?
I didn't get the first part of that question.
Oh, I think what Mr. Pretorius is saying is you do personally know certain people within the SSA that we are talking about here.
Personally,
You know
it's
them.
people that I've,
Yes, people that you know as having been at SSA at a particular time.
not everybody, most of the people that are implicated and we are investigating, I actually met as we were scheduling interviews. So at the beginning, I was just dealing with names of people. So I can say that 99.9% of the people that are implicated in this project were not known to me. So, except maybe people that would be in senior positions where you would know that who's the DG, who's the, those prominent positions.
Yes.
However, the other people, I basically met them during this investigation for the first time.
Okay, all right.
Right. Yes, that was the point I was making. Perhaps should have been qualified more accurately, Ms. Kay, that there are people who occupy positions within the SSA and you would have direct knowledge of who they were and the positions they occupied. Am I correct? Certain people.
Yes, and to also establish what positions people held, most of our interviews started with just the beginning, when a person joined the SSA, what positions they held throughout. So that also gave the team some kind of background in terms of where the person has been, who they may have been exposed to, and the kind of experience they may have had.
Right. It may help us to understand the scope of the investigation more accurately if we asked you over what period of time did the investigation last, or for what period of time has it already been in existence, I should say?
The investigation.
Yes, Vesa.
As indicated in the introduction, there was Project Momentum, which started in June 2018. So in December, that's when Vesa was established to reinforce what Momentum had already begun. So that was December 2018 that we were appointed, but some of the members that were in Momentum continued in this.
All right. But Vesa at least has been ongoing for 2 years.
Yes.
More than 2 years, right? And during that time, if you could give the chair an indication of the number of people, approximately, not precisely, you would have interviewed.
Hang on, let's take an adjournment. I say it's 4 o'clock, and let's talk about how far we will go. I am prepared to sit longer. How does the plan look like in terms of tomorrow? And
Chair, we're not going to finish today.
yes, but we should do as much as we can.
We should do as much as we can.
Yeah.
I must confess my stamina doesn't match yours. So I would like to limit it.
No, you are standing and I'm seated.
Yes, that's true.
Yeah.
There is a mitigating circumstance.
Yeah, so in terms of Ms. K giving evidence, her evidence spilling over to tomorrow in terms of the legal team, did that fit within the plan or?
Yes, it does fit within the plan,
Or she's
Chair,
not
so
pushing out a witness
I
that?
would prefer if we could, well, it all depends on Ms. Kay, of course, as
Yeah.
well. Perhaps we
Yeah.
should consult her. But I wouldn't, because I've still got to prepare.
Yes.
I would prefer if we could stop sometime around 5 o'clock.
Okay, no, that's fine, particularly if the plan for tomorrow was, it's not like there's a witness who will be pushed out.
Yes, no, there's no witness to be pushed out.
Oh, okay, no, that's fine. Well, I think then I would be guided by your assessment, even whether we should go up to 5.
Yes, I think, Chair, it would, if I may ask that we adjourn.
Yes, and then, yeah, and then continue tomorrow.
Yes, Chair.
Continue, start at 10 tomorrow?
At 10, Chair.
Start at 10. Okay, no, that's fine. Maybe we should do that. Then what I'm not sure about, and do you think we'd finish tomorrow? Because I'm looking at how much we have covered in terms of Mr. Y's affidavit. We've done 25 of 80 pages, unless that suggests we might not.
Barring any intervention from my right, Chair, we should get much further.
Yeah.
In fact, virtually finish tomorrow, but
Oh,
it's not
okay.
certain. We may have to go to Friday.
Okay, okay. No, that's fine. So, Ms. K, you are following the discussion?
Yes, I am, Chair.
Yes, you have no problem.
No, I don't have any problem.
Okay, I think we will then adjourn now, and then we'll resume tomorrow at 10 o'clock. So
you, Chair.
you will come back to your place from where you are giving evidence tomorrow at 10, Ms. K.
Thank you, Chair.
Okay. We are going to adjourn then until tomorrow at 10. We adjourn.
That was